Happy Hanukkah, everybody. We are going to be discussing the topic of gambling away your life, also known as, is it mutter to play Dreidel on Hanukkah? So to that effect, we're going to be going through the sugya, and hopefully we'll all come out with something new on the topic. Okay, so again, I posted the story sheet in the chat. I'll also be sharing the screen for those who are who are not as big of fans of trying to split their screen themselves. I'll be doing it, not to worry. It'll hopefully be nice and big. If you can't see it still, let me know. I currently have one source per page, so I think it should be big enough for almost everybody. Okay, so here we go. So before we start, why would somebody think that it would, before I give reasons why it's a problem to actually, play Dreidel, what do we think? Why is it bad to play Dreidel or gamble? Yes.
Gambling's not bad.
Okay, let's just throw out some reason before the sources. So
you can't be a witness.
It'll make it okay. But I don't want to be a witness. Like I'm not being a witness anytime soon, anyways. So like, what's the difference, right? Like I understand if you want to be a witness, but let's say that's not your job. Your job is, I don't know, you're a lawyer. So what do you care, right? You don't need to be a witness. You're the lawyer. Lawyers don't need to have the same degree of like being cross-examined. They just got to ask the fun questions themselves. So who cares, right? So you're right. Maybe you could be a witness. But what else? What would be a problem? Any other problem we have with gambling?
You can't sign an ksuba.
That's part of the you can't be a witness problem. So, is there any other issues why we think you should be able to play Dreidel?
Rabbi Metzger, I don't know about other people, but you're very unstable.
Oh, okay. So
does anyone else hear that? Like I hear everything.
Aren't we told to earn our living by? Aren't we told to earn our living by the sweat of our brow?
Right. We're supposed to make money by the sweat of our brow. The problem being is that if you do it by gambling, right, it's not your sweat of your brow, if you're stealing it off of somebody else's sweat. Right? You deserve that.
Sometimes at the crap tables, you can really sweat your brows.
I'm not saying that it's not stressful. The question is whether or not it's considered a good day's work. So okay, good. So now let's break into the sugya, and then we'll see. Hopefully that'll make things a little more clear. Okay. And at any point, if anything's unclear, please shout out. Okay, I see. Danny Rosenberg said that it's stealing. Very good. Okay, so I think we got most of the reasons that we're going to come up. So we're doing really great right now.
Is Dreidel Assur? Is it Assur to play Dreidel? That's his topic.
Yep. Okay. So now let's continue, and we're going to go to. We're going to start going through the sources now. Okay. So the first source, right, as was noted correctly by Mark, right, is based on the question of testimony. Who is good for testimony and who is not? So who would like? So since you guessed right, Mark is gonna read for us the first source in English. Okay, this is the Mishnah Sanhedrin, and it is dealing with different types of witnesses that are no good.
Invalid. Jurors, and sellers of sabbatical goods. Rabbi Shimon says previously they were called gatherers of sabbatical goods, but because of tax collectors, they became known as sellers of sabbatical goods. Rabbi Yehuda says, when are these invalid? When they have no other trade, but when they have another trade, they are acceptable.
Okay, so as it seems right now, do we know why they're no good based on the Mishnah?
Why?
Like, does it say what's wrong with, let's say, being a gambler or being a usurer? Do we know why explicitly from the Mishnah?
Oh.
Not really.
It might be implicit that they're not trustworthy.
Right. Some of them are not trustworthy, But as far as exactly why they're not trustworthy, they're no good, it's not so clear.
Correct.
So luckily we have the Gemara, which is going to make things make hopefully a lot more sense. Okay. So the Gemara, so we're going to focus on the first case, that of the dice player, right? The Masachat Bakuvia. Okay. Okay. So again, so this is the Gemara immediately following the Mishnah. Okay. So okay, I believe Danny had said that that was a question relating to stealing, but I believe Danny, does your audio work? I think his I don't think Danny's audio works. I guess we'll have to have another. Who here likes hard to pronounce words?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Moshe. Okay. So you're going to be you're going to have to try and properly pronounce this Mahta. Okay.
Mahta.
That's the hard word. Okay, but the rest of it should be straightforward. Again, we'll go with the English, and I'll highlight the Hebrew word when I think the Hebrew word is helpful.
Masacha Bekubia Micah Avid. So what's wrong with it?
We'll start with the English. Let's go with the English. Yeah.
What's wrong? What wrong does the dice player do? Rabbi Chaim said he is disqualified because it is gambling. It is an asmachta, and an asmachta is not legally binding. Rabbi Shesha said such cases do not come under the category of asmachta, but the reason is that they, specifically dice players, are not concerned with the general welfare. Wherein do they differ? If he, the gambler, acquired another trade.
Okay.
Translation.
So what reasons do we have now?
Did you see the snow?
What are the potential things that we have wrong now, based on the right? What do we have wrong now, based on the Gemara? Right? What's wrong with being a gambler?
They don't care about the general community.
Right? They don't care about anybody else. Right? All they do is they try and suck money out of people all day long, and that's bad. Right? So that would imply what's the difference? What's wrong? Right, that was Rosh Hashanah's opinion. What's the issue there? Right, it's that you're not doing anything productive. You're not sweating for your labor. Instead, you're taking somebody else's stuff. Right? You should have had a better job.
They're taking advantage of people.
Right, you're taking advantage of people. Right, but what's the difference between that and the first opinion of Rabbi Bar Chama? Right. So before we get to Rabbi Chaim, let's look at Rashi and help explain what the problem is on a smach. All right. One of them is you're not being productive for society, right? Oseg b'yeshuva shel olam, right? Working on the betterment of the world, or in settling the world. So, right, that's the problem. So now, as far as what exactly these are, we're going to look at Rashi. Hopefully help us out. Okay. Okay. So here we go. So now Rashi is going to help explain what the Gemara is talking about, in case some of us were not quite sure. So he starts talking about, based on some of his points from the Mishnah that are helpful. Again, that this is all about talking about giving a testimony. And then when it says that, when it talks about what's a dice player, as we get to in the Gemara, Rashi's, the Mishnah gives us a little hint that all of these are thieves. The Torah says, don't have wicked witnesses, even more so judges. So the problem is that you're doing something wrong. Like you're essentially a thief. If you're right, so that's the problem, is that you're doing some sort of thievery, as will happen with all of the cases we had in Mishnah, something to do with being a thief. Okay, so then the question, and why does it matter if that's your only profession? Right? He has that profession except for that one, since he doesn't busy himself with developing the world. He isn't familiar with the laws and how to do business and isn't afraid of sinning. So what's the issue if he's, so what's the issue then of it? So there's an additional thing, a reason, not just the fact that you're not being productive, but that you are more readily willing to do something wrong now, right? You not only aren't you being helpful, but you're doing something that's even worse than being not helpful, right? There's one thing if you spent all day, do it like let's say you spent all day meditating, you did absolutely nothing, right? So that would be one thing. But here, this is even less than nothing, right? It's like negative to society. Okay, so the question is, right, this would be pretty. I mean, being gambling is pretty bad based on this.
Rabbi, is that the player or the dealer that's in the bat, or is it both?
Perhaps somebody who's professionally involved with this, either side, it appears. Anybody who's involved in dice playing, right? If you spend all day doing dice playing, it means that you're doing something wrong. So we'll get into more details in a little bit. So the first thing let's look at is the first thing the Gemara said is it's an issue of asmachta, right? What's the problem with asmachta?
It's just a reliance. It's not it's when you rely on something as a secondary proof. Is that
right? So you didn't fully acquire your winnings, right? Even if you won by gambling, you didn't really win. You really hustled the guy, or you stole from him somehow. There's no way you actually outright won. This is how gambling works. Never really got it. Why? Why is it considered to be? And then Rashi continues, right? Asmachta, something he didn't commit to, or other relies on it isn't true. He thinks he'll win, and sometimes they beat him, and therefore he does not acquire it. Why doesn't he acquire it? Right? It doesn't acquire it, meaning it's basically theft. It's not truly theft. It's basically theft. So there is a difference, which will hopefully help us a little bit later. So then the question is, what do we mean by asmachta, right? So then Rashi gives a couple of cases here. Okay, and so we'll start with the reasons and we'll ignore the cases. Hopefully that'll be okay. We'll get back to these cases again later. So for now, let's just start with the reasoning, right? Why is it called an asmachta? For example, if in a situation in which the man is obligating himself has reason to believe that he will not actually have to pay, right? So there's something wrong with the person's thought process. They don't really fully commit when they're doing so. Right. So, for instance, the question of whether or not if somebody says the case of a mitzvah is that somebody needs a contract for your field, and it says, oh, if you don't do by a certain date, you'll have to pay a fine. So you can't really be expected to pay the fine. Enforcing that last fine is not necessarily as easy to enforce because most people fully intend to pay earlier. So therefore, enforcement of that fine is more difficult because it's considered to be on a asmachta. The person didn't really mean to agree to it when they signed it because they didn't really think they were going to actually have to pay that extra money. Okay, right. And there's another case after that, so we'll skip down to. Okay, and now we're getting to the gambling. Okay, a wager though. Right? What's the difference between the different types of gambling, right? So there's one, which is where you don't necessarily give up on it, but a true wager is not considered to be an asmachta. Why not? Because each player realizes that as skilled as he may be at the game, the outcome is nonetheless governed by chance. Therefore, he is resigned to pay if he loses, and the winner is thus not guilty of stealing. Okay, so this last bit had a lot of things in the sense that we'll have to pick apart. Okay, so when you actually gamble, the question is, have you fully gone through with everything? right? Do we say that it's fully to chance and therefore it's okay? Or if you don't fully commit, now it's stealing. So that's this is asmachta. It's almost stealing, but it's not necessarily stealing. It kind of depends on who you take your money from when you win the game, right? Was the person fully committed or not? And that's a hard thing to tell. So odds are you probably stole from like a whole bunch of people if you're a professional gambler.
So are you saying that a slot machine is better than poker?
Yes. Based on this, 100% better, right? Because poker, you never really do ever fully give it. No, until the last second, you're like, nah, they can turn my card. It's possible, but when you, as opposed to when you put the money and then right, a pure chance. Let's say you're just simply, and there's no way that you can improve upon. It's like you get, let's say the classic, the dumbest game of dice. You roll for higher score, right? There's no way to cheat. This comes down to there's no strategy involved. It's just rolling the dice. Right, so in that case, it would be okay.
Should be a better game.
Opposed to, in a case, let's say, if there is some strategy or skill involved.
But there's a little bit of skill involved in crap, so.
Right, so that would be a problem, according to this reason. So as it stands right now, seemingly, we are all unable to gamble.
But it's almost counterintuitive. It's almost counterintuitive. You think the thing with more skill would be better, not worse.
Right. So that's the issue with asmachta. Is that it's you're basically stealing. Right. The question is, which one is when did you cross the boundary between stealing and not stealing? And that is hard to tell because it's a fine line. So let's here we go. Right, so let's scroll back up to the Gemara. Okay, so there's we had two sets of reasons. One reason is because of the asmachta and some sort of stealing going on. Right, that's the first reason we had. Right, we just explained asmachta. Right, that's one line of reasoning. That's Rabbi Chaim. It's based on the problem is if you're stealing from somebody, which would mean that once you are, which would mean that, let's say if you're playing a game that's purely chance and you fully committed to it, then it's possible for it to be allowed again. That was the first opinion. Okay, but what was the second opinion?
Because I'm hearing you.
Okay. The opinion is that of Rav Sheshet, right? Rav Sheshet's opinion is that the issue is that they're not osek yeshuvo shel olam, right? They're not positively contributing to society and the world. And that's the problem. And what's the nafkamina, right? What's the test case? Somebody who gambles part-time, right? The guy who goes gambling on weekends but has a full-time job. So on the one hand, he's definitely working, helping the world, right? The guy's, he's a lawyer, he's a doctor, he's an accountant, he's a teacher, he's insert job here during the week, right? Pick your favorite Jewish job, right? That's what he's doing during the week. Oh, say Yeshuva Shalom, right? Shkoyach. So that works according to Rav Sheshet. But according to Rabbi Chaim, what's the problem? You're stealing. So I don't care if you steal part-time or if you steal full-time, you're stealing money from people. And that's a problem, and therefore you're never going to be a good witness. Right? So depending on which one it is, that'll be the question. So it's also worthy of noting that what does this whole discussion seemingly center around?
Trustworthiness?
Trustworthiness, which means it's only relevant for?
Yes.
Right? Testimony. Very good. Right? That's what it would seem like. But that's not how everybody's going to be taking it. Okay? So as far as can we generalize it to other places? So let's see where we go. Okay, so now we're going to skip. Now we're going to jump. We're jumping forward in history, right? Rambam, 12th century, into 13th century in Egypt. Okay, so now let's look at the way that he redefines what's problematic about these people. Okay, we volunteer for anybody here ever see Wicked on Broadway?
It's on my bucket list.
I saw it in Toronto.
So that counts. That counts. I meant like saw it actually put on. Okay, good. So Mark, you want to take it?
Sorry, which one? This one? There
are other wicked persons.
There are other wicked persons who are not acceptable as witnesses, even though they are required to make financial restitution and are not punished by. I can't. It's covered. I can't see the word.
Is that better?
Covered by, not punished by lashes. Since they take money that does not belong to them lawlessly, they are unacceptable, as Devarim 19:16 says, when a lawless person rises up against a person. Similarly, dice players are disqualified if this is their only occupation. Since such a person does not involve himself in ordinary business pursuits, it can be assumed that his livelihood is dependent on his gambling, which is forbidden as the shade of robbery. The above applies not only to dice players, but also to all those who gamble with the shells of nuts or the shells of pomegranates. Similarly, our sages did not disqualify only those who train doves, but also those who gamble with other animals, beasts and fowl, saying the owner of the one that will outrace the other or vanquish the other will acquire the stakes put up by both. Similarly, other analogous types of gamblers are disqualified, provided they do not derive their livelihood from a source other than gambling. All of the above are disqualified according to rabbinic decree.
Okay, so the Rambam is, right, so according to the Rambam, when is it a problem? Right, is it a problem that I gamble once in a while or more than that? What makes it a problem? Elaine, you said something, you were muted. I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, if most of your livelihood is from gambling, if you're gambling, to support yourself.
Right, professional gamblers is the problem. But if you're anything else, it should be fine. The issue is that that's all you are, right? So, right, if you have a job on the side, that wouldn't necessarily be a problem. Okay, so that's according to the Rambam. Now we have the Radvaz, who explains that what is the problem, who's further explaining the Rambam. So he says, right, so what's the problem is that, right, so there is an assumption that he subsists off of gambling, which is theft, and follows the opinion that is an issue of a smachta, and the problem is theft. Right, so the problem is when you live off of thievery and you always are stealing, that's the problem. Like once you're a thief, we can't trust you at all, and therefore you're wicked, and that's the problem, is that you're a thief. Right, but we only really get the name of a thief if that's all you do. If you, let's say you did it once or twice, that's not really such a problem. But on the other hand, we have a tshuva of the Rivash. Okay, so he lived in the I think, right, so he lived a couple of centuries later than the Rambam. So he gives a different reason. So who's the one who thinks that who really doesn't like gambling? Anybody here really anti-gambling?
Not in this corner.
Okay. And anybody? No, nobody. Okay, fine. I'll play the bad guy. What? I'll play the bad guy who doesn't like gambling. Unless, wait, Mark, you don't like gambling either?
I don't despise it. I just like it. I don't despise it.
Dislike it. Okay, disliking it's good enough. Okay, so we'll tap you again. Okay.
Even according to Rav Sheshet, since he believes that there is no asmachta by gambling. In any event, it is a disgusting, abominable, and repulsive. It has felled many victims, and mighty are those it has killed.
Okay, so according to the Rivash, Are you allowed to gamble? What does it look like? Yes or no? I'm seeing what you're shaking your heads. Correct. It's a definite, very hard no. Not only is it no, it's like this is going to lead to terrible things, right? So it sounds like in the town of the Rivash, right, in Spain, they seem to have a gambling problem, right? So, right, so actually the Rivash, actually I think that off the centuries off there should be 15th into the 16th. So basically he'd started out in Spain and then moved to Svat. So he's saying that gambling is really dangerous, and he knows of it. And it sounds like he has personal testimony of many people he knows who gambled, and then it led to them costing them their lives. Whether it means literally or figuratively, I don't know, but definitely it is not looking very good. Okay, so that's the Rivash. So on the one hand, we have the Rambam who says the only problem is whether or not you're stealing, and that's the problem. And if you have a job, it's okay. On the other hand, we had the Rivash who said all gambling is terrible, disgusting, abominable, and repulsive, and it kills people. Okay, whether it means literally or figuratively, either way, it's still not looking good. So what do we do at the end of the day? Okay, so to this, we're going to jump to the Shulchan Aruch, and we'll see what the Shulchan Aruch has to say on the topic. Okay, we're going to get to we're going to head to Halachah Maaseh. So, right, so let's look at his paragraph here. Right, so he's doing this based off. It looks very similar in language to the Rambam, but there's certain things that he leaves off from the Rambam and from the Mishnah and the list we've quoted so far that would make it clear what his opinion is. Okay, anybody here Sephardi by any chance, or any of the Dot Mizrach? No, all Ashkenazim. Oh man, so boring.
Well, not in Israel.
Grandma, would you like to read? Grandma, can you see? You'll have to unmute yourself. Grandma, you know how to do that? I guess not. Okay, we'll do the shot. Okay, so I guess okay. So Moshe, can I? So I know you're not the biggest fan of his conclusion, but you're gonna have to read it anyways.
Fine. So what qualifies as dice playing? Those that play with wood, pebbles, or bones and make a condition with each other that whomever defeats the other in that game will take such and such an amount. In other words, 7 to 6 odds. Similarly, if one plays with domesticated or undomesticated animals or birds and makes a condition that whichever animal defeats or outruns the others will take such and such an amount from the other, or anything similar, it would all be prohibited and would be rabbinical robbery.
Okay, so according to the Shulchan Aruch, right, or Yosef Cairo, right? So the BAYT Yosef, is there any? So, are you allowed to gamble in any way, shape, or form? Even in the it's just chance, or anything else we mentioned before?
Never allowed.
Right, never allowed. Right. So for all those who like playing Dreidel, I guess you look like you're in hot water right now. Okay. So then we get into the case of what if you're playing with a non-Jew, right? And then he says, well, for one question is a question of how stealing works with a non-Jew, and which we'll leave that part aside. Even if you want to claim that there's no issue of stealing from a non-Jew because insert your reason why that's okay. We're not gonna deal with that so get out because that's okay. So what's the why is it why it gets worse. Keep going. From here, there is. Can you everybody read that?
Oh, there is. Okay, there is, however, a prohibition of participating in the idle matters that a person should not participate in his entire life. Rather, he should involve himself with matters of wisdom and advancing of the world. This opinion disgraces with the earlier one. With Sant says that one is not disqualified unless he has no other trade. If he has another trade, however,
Wait,
even
pause.
if
1 second. That's the Ramal already when he gets to the italics. So until the first part, he's like, okay, right? There's a problem of doing so. Definitely a problem, right? Even with a non-Jew, because this is an unproductive activity and you're not helping the world. It's bad. But there is an opinion that says, like, the only problem is this opinion disagrees with the one earlier that says that only because that's your only job. But what's the last thing that the BAYT is quoting here? That it's a problem because you're violating, even if, let's say, you got around the stealing issue, there's still a prohibition of being involved in gambling and doing that for your livelihood. And that's a problem. Even if it's not full time, if you have another job, it's still a problem according to this opinion. So according to that, right? So again, so quite clearly, the Shulchan Aruch says that you cannot gamble. For all those who are eagerly hoping that they can, we have the Ramah, okay, our Ashkenazi posting, who's going to help us get our fix. So here we go.
if he has another trade, however, even if he plays with a Jew, he would not be disqualified. This custom is already spread in accordance with the latter opinion due to dice play, and the only one disqualified is someone who has no other trade. If someone plays on trust, whether he is required to pay is discussed in Siman Reish Zion, translation wiki source.
Right, which is the next source, right? So the Ramah says actually there is a way that it could be allowed, assuming that it's not. The only problem is that if you're a professional gambler, right? So being a professional gambler, seemingly there is no way to solve that, right? If you're a professional gambler, that's it. Like there's no way to help you, right? But if you do it part time, or if you do it, once in a while for fun, there seems to be a way that it could be okay. So let's try and see what that is. Right, he mentions that you have to somehow get around. We're getting around the issue of stealing somehow. The question is, how do we do that? To that, we have. So this one's going to get a little bit complicated. So again, so you see how. So just to explain, so we have to figure out how we can not be stealing. We mentioned before there's an issue of asmachta, right? Issues being with the person, you have to have a fully committed and be sure that the person is going to get the money, and so that you're not, and he's fully giving it to you willingly, wholeheartedly, so there's no stealing involved whatsoever, right? The problem is that seemingly that's impossible according to the Gemara and according to Rashi. It doesn't seem to say that, like, unless it's like right? Rashi says maybe absolute pure chance we could allow, but the Gemara didn't seem to say anything about that. It seems that there's always a problem of asmachta according to that opinion, and therefore you'd always be stuck. And that's also similarly what the Rambam said, that there's always a problem of some degree of stealing involves gambling. So that's gonna be a problem. Okay, so now you notice this is kind of long. Okay, so we're gonna try and go through it. If at some point it gets confusing, because it's a little technical as far as the transactionary side, there's a summary of one line at the end. Okay, so we only have, what do we have? How many sources we have left? We have like 2 sources left. So after this one, this one might take us, the longest time, but hopefully it'll be clear. Okay, so now the question, and now we started out talking about asmachta in general. Let's say, can we make an implicit part of a contract based on some future event that's not definitively A leads to B? Right, but something that is conditional on somebody's actions in the future that may end up affecting the contract. Are you allowed to do that or not? So the Shulchan Aruch, which is the part, again, that's not italicized. That's the first part here. So it said it's a problem if you do conditionally, if this occurs or does not occur, and if you haven't fully committed, that's going to be a problem, right? If this occurs, if this does not occur, has not made up his mind to the transfer of possession, since in his mind he relied on the fact that the matter may occur or may not occur, right? So if you in your contract are betting on something that is not fully determined and isn't clear, and like this an event that may or may not happen, it's a problem in your contract. It's a problem in a contract, and therefore it's not going to be enforced. That type of condition is no good. Right? It has to be, if you do this, if you do A, then B will happen. If you do C, then D will happen. Right? There can't be any room for maybe this, maybe that. It has to be a if this, then that, or if, right, in a direct sequence is how the contract has to be worded and written. Can't be something that an outside party could change the way that would happen. Right? If you did this would happen. If it was, but if this, then that. If you're not clear about the progression of events, that leads to problems. So now we're going to get into 3 distinctions in the laws of asmachta. This is the Ramah. Okay, so this discussion originally is quoted in Tosfot on our sugya about asmachta. I brought it in the Ramah because it's a little clearer and easier to follow when it's quoted by the Ramah than when it's quoted by Tosfot. So hopefully this will be understandable. If it's not, that again, please stop me at any point. I'm going to read this one because it's a little complicated. Again, just let me know if anything's unclear, and I'm happy to repeat myself because this is the crux of if you want to gamble. This is very important to know in order that way you can gamble properly. Okay, so any situation where it is not in the party's power to do and is dependent on others, such as where he says, acquire wine from such and such place. And if you do not acquire it, you will owe me such and such amount, which is not in the party's power because they may not want to sell to him. It would be an asmachta in all respects, and no kinyan would be affected. Right? So if you say, go buy me, right? You ask him to buy you a bottle of wine. And if you don't manage to pull it through, you're going to have to pay me X amount of money instead. So, right, so that's not a valid term of the contract because the guy's going to do his best, and it's not up to him if he can buy it or not. Right? For all you know, the seller will have been sold out, or will say, I'm not going to sell to you, I hate you. And then, right, and it's not based on your ability to go to the market and buy it. It's based on whether or not the other person will give it to you or not. And that's a problem because that's, right, the person, when the person accepted, oh, can you go buy a bottle of wine for me? They had no intention at any point of accepting this fine. So therefore, the fine will not be enforceable. Okay, that's case number 1. Right, so it needs to be the person who's accepting the condition needs to be fully aware of it. Stipulation 2. In any situation where the party can perform the action and do not exaggerate, such as where he said, if I leave the barren field and do not work, I will pay the rest of my property. It would not be an asmachta and a kinyan would be affected. Right? So if he says, if I do it wrong, like he gives a reasonable condition, then that's fine. But if there's another issue of asmachta, if you exaggerate it, if he did exaggerate it, said, if I don't work the field, I will pay 1,000 sus, it will be an asmachta, and a kinyan will be accepted. Thus, whereas seller transfers to the buyer on the condition that if he does such and such, he will acquire, it is an asmachta because the fulfillment of the condition is not dependent on the seller but the buyer. Again, the issue being that it's not a fully serious sale. There's something wrong with the intent at the time of the sale. And 3, this is more, right? If it was not in the party or anyone else's powers, which is the case of dice playing or something similar, where one does not know whether he will be successful or not, and he's still made the condition, he has certainly made up his mind to transfer out of doubt. When is this true, right? So there's another case of where, like, let's say it's completely out of everybody's hands, right? It's all up to chance entirely, and therefore you've committed for that sense. But the problem is that what are you relying on? Chance. So how do you solve the issue of chance? Because you never give up with this. It's always like, they'll roll my number, right? Maybe I'll get the card I need in poker. There's always that possibility, right? So when would you be allowed to do so? There's a way to do so if you're using cash, right? If you place cash down, if you use cash, right? So that's you've fully given up on it. But if they're playing on credit, it would not be a valid transaction because the person never really gives up. They're always like, nah, I'll win it back, and that's a problem. Okay, so now, so this gives us one of the conditions that we're going to need if you want, right? So we need to make sure that the person's intent's fully there, and we have to be using cash. Okay, right? It can't be on credit. It has to be cash, right? All of the money is there to be used. Okay. Okay, then there's a case of, right? So you're saying that, oh, well, let's say you want to go to the you want to go to the casino, right? And I'll trade money, right? I'll give them something, and then they'll give me chips in exchange for that, right? Let's say I'm gonna give them my watch, and instead they'll give me chips for my watch, with the watch being the collateral. That would not help because there's no money here, so that's no good, right? It has to be done with cash, specifically is the only way the person is fully committing. Okay, so there's another condition that you would need. Okay, right, so then we have the Mordechai, who has another condition, right? One is, it needs to be with cash. Okay, we have cash. Not up to, all right, completely out of your hands. And then the Mordechai, right, so with cash, completely up to chance, so you have no skill and can't affect the decision. And therefore you have to have full intent to give up on it. And then we have the Mordechai who adds, you have to place it on the table. Take cash, put it on the table. So then you need, so again, whether or not chips work or not, as representative of cash is a separate, well, let's say they count as cash, right? You exchange this directly for this money, right? This is worth $10 at this point. You just use it because it's more fun to play with, right? So let's consider that as if it's cash. Right, then if you consider it cash, then assuming you put all the money down on the table, that could be okay if you're using cash.
Rabbi, so in the accounting world, we have a term called cash equivalent. Is that which is what I believe poker chips would fall under? Would that be considered what he would have to put down?
That could be sufficient. Yes, the liquid cash, or that could be considered, right? If it's considered cash equivalent and treated as such by law, that'd be sufficient also. Similarly, let's say if you, all right, so but it'd have to be something that's like readily exchangeable and usable as cash, right?
Yeah, I know that like if you go into a casino, you could still use poker chips to tip the guy carrying your luggage or something.
Right. So that means that it's used as cash, which means that so therefore that would be fine. It would be a currency of that location. So that would be okay.
But it's localized to the casino though.
If it's still considered and treated like it's valid currency, it's currency. Technically, all currency nowadays falls under that category because it's not really backed by anything physical and solvent, technically. But that's an economy question that we're not going to get into the economics of that. That's just, yeah, we could another time. That would be its own sheer in of itself. How are you allowed to use money that's not actually money? How can you use modern money and how's that allowed? It's a fun question, but again, not what we're talking about. We're talking about gambling here. Okay, so we have that. So now we have you have to have full intent. Oh, let's put back to the full screen so that way it's just nice and big. Okay, right. So now you need to have full intent, complete full intent. In order to achieve this complete full intent and to not be a smata, so you're not stealing anymore. What do you need to do? You need to be using cash. You need to place it on the table. It needs to be a game of pure chance, and right. So there's an aside in the middle here that not only does just agree and hold that you can never play ever. That's also an opinion, right? The commentary of the Mordechai says that, well, if you say it's Assur to gamble, it's Assur to gamble. No matter how these things aren't going to help you, right? So we'll get back to that opinion later. Okay, so then also not only to put it on the table, but the table has to be a place, right? There are those who say the only permitted with the table where the money is owned by both parties. Okay, so now we need, not only does the table need the money on the table has to be a common space that everybody has a right to that area. right? So you put your money in the middle of the table, and whoever puts their money, that would be okay. Okay. Here, so I guess we'll, okay. So the next part. No, yeah, that's more about inheritance. Okay, so then there's other, so summarize, so summary at the end, right? According to the Re, you need money on the table, place, right? According to the Re and the Mordechai, you need the money to be on the table, and the place where this is, as the place where everybody owns it jointly. Oops, sorry about that again. And it's a game that neither party thinks that he can win, and therefore they all truly give up all their full rights to the money, right? So in order, so based on these criteria, what type of gambling is allowed? Right, we're left with games of chance, where you're unable to affect the end result. Because if there's always a chance of you affecting the end result, say poker would be particularly problematic because poker is a game that has a lot of skill, not just luck to it, and therefore there's a problem of, right, basically depends on how much skill is involved in the game. Right, if it's a game with next to no skill, right, it would be, there is room to allow it, but if not, then it's much more problematic to have to allow. And there, you could still allow, let's say the Rambam assumes to get that yes, it might be slightly stealing. Yeah, you try to figure out a way to have it not be stealing, which is kind of hard, right? You need to have everybody agreed upon fully, committing to the transfer of the money, which is a little bit hard to do properly. Okay, so right now, so the opinions that say you're allowed to gamble in Halachah means you have to have managed to, all parties involved have to be fully committed to giving up their money and need to have done a physical placement of the money, which is cash money, meaning, right, not just, like, oh, I say I'll pay you. No, you got to put the money down or it's not going to work. And it has to be a case where where you fully give up on it. Guys, is this clear? Right, so as far as the degree of skill involved, and whether you've ever not, that's a question, but the point is you have to fully have given up on the money in order for it to work. Right, so for this, we'll leave Rabbi say that for a second. So let's say the case of you wanted to, let's say, run a community gambling or poker night, right? So you need to have everybody commit in the beginning that all the money that I bring in, like you pay at the door, it's all sunk, right? Because if you don't agree fully and explicitly and say that I'm giving up on all of my money that I'm paying in now, there's going to be a problem. Which is why normally a lot of times when they run these type of events, they if the BAYT ever ran in one of these and the conditions they use, just let me know if everybody knows if they work. But normally you would not be playing then to get your money actually back. You play just so you get the most point total at the end, and then there'll be a prize corresponding to that. So that way it's not fully truly gambling, right? It's more like you're playing a game for prizes. And any of the money that's changing hands was fully committed to be given, right? Important point being that you fully committed when you place down the money that you no longer have rights to it. So we'll get to that, and we'll get to that at the end. Okay, when we get to okay, we're running short on time. Okay, so now, right, so this is again, so you have to make sure fully committed to give the money up. So now it's the case of Dreidel. What do we think? When the way you normally play Dreidel, right? Everybody's got everybody has, again, 4-sided cube. Is there any skill involved in Dreidel playing? What do we think?
Depends if you load it.
Okay, short of outright cheating, no, right? Right, short of using that would be a problem. Yes, using a loaded Dreidel is definitely going to be, it would be a problem. But short of that, you're given a chance. So therefore, right, and not only that, where do you keep the money?
In the middle.
In the middle, right? You're gambling with the money in the middle. So as far as that goes, have we fulfilled all the conditions? money's on the table. Not only do you have the actual money you're gambling on the table, but you place the money in place that everybody writes to. Does anybody really think that he's a better chance of winning than anybody else in Dreidel? No, because like everybody spins, and it's just like literally based on where it falls. Like there's nothing you can do, right? So according to Ashkenazim, are we allowed to play Dreidel?
Yes.
Yes. But what if you're not? What if you happen to be Saradi? So that we have Rabbi Yosef. So we mentioned before about the Ravaz about the dangers of gambling.
Mhm.
Okay, so here's the Rabbi Yosef adds on that. Also regarding the lottery, right? This question was asked: are you allowed to participate in the lottery in Israel? Right? There's only governments are allowed to run proper lotteries because basically it's viewed as too good of a scheme. The question is, are you halakhically allowed to participate in this or not? So he says, so in addition to, again, gambling being a terrible, disgusting thing, we quoted the Rivash just before, he says there are people who buy lots of tickets, spending almost their entire salary, thinking that one number may win, and in the end, they lose all their money and property. So Rivash said before about it being a problem, an abominable practice, and it has failed many great people. So you say, oh, lottery's not so bad. It's like the lightest form of gambling. Rabbi Yosef saying he knows the people who blew their entire salary on lotto tickets. So then if you fast forward again, he goes through all the stories I quoted and more. And what's his conclusion?
Play roulette.
Who'd like to read the conclusion? Right here.
The conclusion of the law for Sfardim and Eidotes Mizrach, it is forbidden to buy lottery tickets, even more so the various gambling tickets for sports play on Shabbat and violate Shabbat publicly. You're helping people violate sins. Even for Ashkenazim, there are those who prohibit it.
Okay, so Rabbi Yosef, is he in the you should gamble category or the you should never gamble category? What would you say?
Should never gamble.
Never gamble, never do lotto, right? Bad. Okay. So, and now as far as who else subscribes to this general principle of being a bad idea, right? So this is from Gray Matter by Rabbi Chaim Metzger, a Rebbe of mine from TBC. So, right. So this was written, I think, about 20 years ago or so. Right, with like right. So he's giving some other picks. So as far as can you do charity? So just an aside, it's supposed to revise this if you can't do raffles. So right, so Rav Aaron said that you actually can, as well as others, because when you do a charity raffle, you actually are fully committing to give up on the money to give to the charity, and you're just like you don't really expect to win. Right, as opposed to the lotto, which is based on the way that they actually advertise and do it in general, right? We're differentiating the lottery versus like a random raffle, right? The random raffle, like you probably give the money anyways, for the fundraiser. You're just right. So therefore, he's saying the Rav would permit you to do, and many others do permit doing a lottery type, like using a lottery in terms of for fundraising. But on the other hand, here's a list of some people who are very much against it for other reasons. Okay, so Mommy, would you like to read the warning?
Where does it start? Rabbi Chaim?
Yes.
The author, Rabbi Chaim Metzger, once asked Rabbi Yosef Soloveitchik if it's permissible to go to casino for a single visit. The Rav replied succinctly, "It's a bad habit. Don't do it." Rav Mordechai Willig encouraged the author to publicize the Rav's statement. Similar sentiments are expressed by the Mishnah Berurah, 670, Be'er Halachah, SV.
You don't need to read
the Nohagim.
Don't worry.
Okay, sorry. The Aruch HaShulchan, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Ibra Moshe, Rav Yehuda Amital in discussion with the author, Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, a lot of people in discussion with this author, Rav Herschel Schachter in a lecture delivered at Yeshiva, and Rav Mordechai Willig. Okay,
And
so a lot of people, Chaim.
Yes, it's a lot
Yeah.
of people, right?
We will explore the basis for this attitude in the Gemara Rishonim and Shulchan Aruch.
Right. Notice you need, right. So if you want to see more, I got links here. Right. So you got to send the source sheet there if you want to download it for release it later. You can find it on Sefaria. The books is there. Right. If you search gambling on Sefaria, it's like the first thing you get. So, okay. So, right. So so now there's two sides to there's two issues that we can deal with, right? In terms of are you allowed to gamble or not? One side of things, we have there's a technical issue of dealing with how do I not steal? And there's also the issue of, even if I'm not stealing, how could it be, right? There's also the question of gambling being a dangerous activity, right? It's a bad habit to get into, so don't do it, right? And as quoted by the Rivash, as well as Ravad Yosef, as I'm sure many people here may know cases where gambling has ruined people, right? Even people who like seemingly had other jobs and had full, right? It has ruined many people, even those seemingly who are rich and should have known better. Gambling is dangerous. So the question that comes down to, so can you ever gamble? And if so, how could you do it? So this question came up when I was learning in the Morasha Beit Midrash program about 9 years ago. So we were learning Masechet Sanhedrin, and we were seeing what we should do for our off day. So then we decided, so we had to spend, right? So we're like, oh, there's a nearby racetrack. Can we go? So we went through this whole sugya, right? And the issue is that, well, also in Camp Morasha, there also happens to who happens to be in Camp Morasha? Rav Mordechai Willig, quoted here, being very strongly against. So we were trying to figure out how could we go without leading it to be a dangerous addictive activity. So the way what we did is we all in advance had to commit to how much money we would basically normally, let's say if you're going to go watch a TV show, like you're going to go watch a show, you want to go watch a movie, it'll be $15-20, right? So you had to decide how much money you're going to lose, right? Before the day started, we had to decide, we're going to decide how much money you're losing. I think I went with $10, and I think I actually made money on it, but basically, right? So, right? So, but most people lost all their money. They got nothing, right? So again, so we all, picked random racehorses, and that was it. But the point being that in order to do so, we had to make sure, again, this is at the racetrack, there's absolutely no skill whatsoever involved. We had to place the money down in advance, right? According to all of the stipulations of the RE, and to make sure to satisfy the worry of is it becoming an addictive activity. So, right, so we made sure that we're purely doing it as basically as opposed to, there's no a gate fee to go watch a sporting event. So instead, the gate fee is you have to place a bet of $10, right? And that's all it was. So you could argue whether or not that solution is a good idea or not. You could very much argue that it's a dangerous thing. You shouldn't even set foot in a racetrack, and you'd probably be right. But that was what we did. Okay, so fine. And so again, back to our case of Dreidel, right? So can you play Dreidel? So since Dreidel is, as you know, again, it's basically a child's game done with all of the trappings of a child's game. And typically it's money that was planning to be given to the children anyways. So for Ashkenazim, right, it would be permitted. Because it's not one of those games that you expect that's addictive and habit forming, and nobody's going to become a professional Dreidel player. If you've heard of a kid who has that dream, please let me know. And now it is now Assur for him to ever play Dreidel ever again. Also, beware of him having other addictive tendencies in general. Just saying. But on the other hand, we have the Sfaradim, right? It's championed by Rabbi Yosef, saying that you should never gamble because it's a super bad practice, as well as all these other rabbanim we have here, right? It's a bad idea because it leads to bad. It's not going to end well. So as far as right, so is Dreidel mutter? The answer is machloket. Okay. I see I missed some chats. 1 second. Okay. Oh, sorry. I missed some of Danny. Sorry, I missed some of your comments. This is the danger of that's the danger of using Zoom, that you can lose track. Okay. Right. So then. Right. So again, hopefully did I answer everybody's questions? Because if everybody has any questions related to gambling or not that I haven't answered, please feel free to type it in the chat or ask it out loud.
But what about the bigger picture about holding bingos in shuls? Is that a respectful thing to do, to have gambling nights in a shul?
Come on.
So that's a question that each shul should make that call, whether or not they consider that to be an appropriate. Also, again, are they worried about the slew of the question of this being a bad activity you want to promote in your community, or do you say that it's just a game night? That's all it is. You happen to be gambling, but it's really just a game night, right? So that's a judgment call that each community would have to make. I am not sticking my head in there. So
usually it's just a fundraiser for the shul.
But sometimes there's some like conservative shuls that have like bingo nights, and the shul is basically a bingo venue. There's hardly any davening there. It's
right.
And the shul might, or sometimes it's an external organization. The shul gets like a cut, and it's an external organization.
Right. So that's right. So that's part of the question. How concerned are we about leading to bad things to the community? Right? Are we concerned about it being a habit forming and dangerous or not? Right? Is it how big is your worry? Like, is in bingo is not necessarily going to lead to the biggest of addictions and wagering tons of money, because it's just not. But on the other hand, like other forms of gambling, let's say poker, that has ruined people's livelihoods. Let's say going to casino or going to Vegas was definitely more severe.
On an unrelated question, what would you say about a racehorse trainer?
That's loaded.
So the answer is we discussed that a couple weeks ago. I believe it was mentioned in the year on going to the track. I'm gonna get to it. 1 second. It was. A second. I'm gonna open it up and then I'll share that source. So particularly for the horse, if you're just making money off of it, that seemingly should be fine, as pointed out by the Mahari Bruna. Here, let me open that up and then I'll switch. Then I'll do a new here. Here. So the Mahari Bruna. So that was said in the here. Also, let me just do it.
That's small.
Share. There we go. Okay. So then build it small. Sorry about that. Let me try to make it bigger. Oh, and now the formatting just got weird. Okay. Basically, so here he says that you're allowed to do it if it's a profession, you're making money. You're basically an entertainer, and that's fine, right? You're not making money on the gambling, right? If you're just a horse trainer, it's fine, right? So we're talking about, right? Are you allowed to go to the racetrack? And he says you're allowed to go. Why? If you're planning on going to the business, right? That's why it's allowed, because you can make good money training racehorses. People like watching, people put a lot of money into it, right? So then it'll be okay. But that's basically the only allowed because of, right? It's only because of professional. Okay. Right. So yes, to be a racehorse trainer, you'd be allowed to do, but to be a professional bookie, no.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Sorry for leaving the warning on the screen, but I figured I had to just, for the whole for my conscience. Okay. So any other questions? Okay. So thank you everybody for coming. Hopefully we have learned a little bit about gambling and its potential dangers, and so when we are playing Dreidel, hopefully we will be playing Dreidel in the spirit of we beat the Greeks, while not descending into the dark pit known as gambling.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.